Now, indeed, firstly, I want to express my greetings to our long-time friend. And this is something reunion. I believe, I think last more than 20 years, our small group, I think, out of our serious discussion, at least I think we made some contribution. Firstly, for our knowledge about reality, external matters, particles, and our inner world, particularly most sensitive inner world, that is emotion. I think through our discussion, I think some point seems, I think, become clearer. And through that way, I think our discussion also brought some, I think, the impact, I don't know, impact, or I don't know.
Effect.
Those people who usually not much serious about our inner world. I think our discussion brought some
recognition of interest.
Bring some interest. People who normally not much concerned about our inner world. Not necessarily as a religious matter, but simply we are living being with mind, with consciousness, with experience, emotion. So naturally we cannot neglect these things. We want happiness. Happiness is kind of mind. So the very meaning, the very fact of joyfulness is emotion or mind.
Mental state.
So we must know better awareness about that. So I want to express my deep appreciation to our long-time participant, and I must express my deep appreciation and kindness. One late Francisco Varela, and then also Livingston.
Bob Livingston.
Bob
Livingston.
Of course, these are no longer with us, no longer on this planet, but their contribution still remains. So, then, all new participants, this time more people. I appreciate you come here. Not easy to reach here, but in spite that, out of your interest, out of your enthusiasm, come here. So I appreciate. And I'm sure our new participant certainly can make equally important contribution. So, then, what else I should say? Perhaps I may say something. I believe whatever sort of object, whether destructive or whether constructive, whether destructive or constructive, whether you achieve satisfactorily that goal, much depend on the method. Method, realistic method, certainly should bring satisfactory result. Even destructive work. Realistic method can be more effective. Then, now in order to carry a realistic method, it is very important you know the reality. Now, reality, there is always gap, appearance, and the real substance reality. There is a gap. I think animal, I think their method in order to achieve their goal, much based on just appearances. We human beings, more advanced. Now, not because of the satisfy, just appearance, more deeper reality. Now, so far, as we call modern science, is focusing external matters, try to know the substance reality. So quantum physics, all these eventually found marvelous. Meantime, as I mentioned earlier, everybody seeking a happy life, happy day. That means calm mind, peaceful mind. That's also very important for physical health. Very clear. So, therefore, it is illogical while we are satisfied just appearances, but try to know the deeper level about external matter. So why not? Similar attitude towards our internal science or internal thing. So then, automatically, about emotion. Very important. Our life is ups and downs. In our life, I think main factor which brings our life too much ups and too much down is emotion. So it is logical, it's very important to know the very thing which our life become happier or much stress and much disturbances. So therefore, this is not just religious matter, but this is a matter for a better world, happier world, isn't it? So anyway, our work for academic level, but that academic work actually bring to clear the reality. And more better knowledge about the reality, our method can be more realistic. Through that way, our goal, whether constructive or destructive, can be achieved. So, hopefully, our finding will not help, would not lead or help those people who are seeking some destructive goal. Some people who want to manipulate others' mind that better knowledge about mind, about emotion, then they may use these in order to destroy the other. So that's all. So then this time, I want to say a few words in Tibetan. That very 생일군님도 투야 다 돌리치랴. 대템 그저래. 접게. 18th. So now how many years passed?
24년.
오. 자다 레벨은 14년이야. 아주 생일군님도 이제 그도치한 투대를 다 정벌이 고대도와 사실 가나서 뷰리 나리네. 다저 맞아 뷰리 나리. 다들 지금 쳐봐져 나리야. 시티가 체스케 아유 삼월씩. 근데 이게 통주게 되네. 야 별어서 뭐인데 지경이 믿는 나로네. 세리님도 나왔잖아. 지금 최대의 달이야. 요로 이거 다 센터리 생에 중요.
이제나 주고이나. 지 주고이나.
I don't think I don't.
He's only saying a few words in Tibetan for the benefit of the Tibetan audience. I just asked him whether it should be translated. He said not necessary.
This is top secret. Exclusively. Very Tibetan. 그래서 다 벌거 가도 소화제 유도 그걸 매일 매기 단된 거냐라 판도해야 되지. 세리부스로 인해 판도해야 되지. 수저대 알아서 사제비 쳐버서 인해데 판도해야 되지. 차대기 아래. 다 사회가도 담절도 가렸으려나. 사제비 좀더디 딱 쇠버지래 말해. 좀더 딱 미수비지나? 시정부 잡아쳐베 저기 엔도스 섭소셔고 저기 아래. 딱 쇠버지나? 시정 딱 제잖아요. 그 셉셉도 그래야지다. 그 내가 진짜 제실로 돼야지 봐야. 그래서 이래서 좀 된데 런이게 개론다고 캐는 섹셔들 세션을 레코드를 많이 나와서 귀신 면세네. 셔서 뭐시는 뽑아침도 하러 송대하고 런이게 떠들때 딱 쇠버지잖아요. 송거야 하다. 그래서 이래서네 그제 세리군님도 또 지금 쉬어로 당한 맹하시는 쉬어로 변해 지금 견도 시간들이 있는 투시 깨시하면은 뒤 레벨 차이로 돼야지. 마도 산제배 쳐봐 지금 거네. 산제배 쳐봐. 다음에 산제배 쳐 대화 여부 컨실러 산제미 자미 또도 마시버지는 애야 지금 조사하는 일잖아요. 근데 저 야마스라고 있네. 나고 고터체. 그 대화를 용스 대신 남샤가 더네. 대니그 남샤가 더네. 제니 산제배 쳐가 남샤 생기신 분이나 각개면도 같이. 저 들이 있잖아요. 편도 여덟시 제 제말에 터미나 가 까나라 자 today 다 들이데 가서 때 뷰징 미다 라마키시스 뭐네 다 가다 들미저로 거르지도 페어리 아니 니네 다 들인 가서 한다 배배 보고 나네 다 아들 음질로 좀 제시로 서로 지금 되게 생리를 통한 여대가 지금 생리인데 로전 여대들이 아들이 사박하실래요 아래 계산 시우지 전부터 통구도 아니 말한저다 지금 상계배 최다 상계배 떠주고 타는 셔야 되다 지금 생리를 타는 변시다 지금 재니 아주 숭지게 타네 가다 미셔서 따처로 돌아지다 시셔 따처로 담배 타네 딱 주든지 아주 밀어 디기 요구하시다 미지소 나로 디기 요구하시기 해봐요 나도 디갈이야 지금 미스야 서로 kim사 나로 다리자 서로 땀면데 애니 셔서네 지구 정도서 서로 땀면데 여더니 탑도 센티모드가 투데가 세버로 왔다 다 센티야 맨센 센티야 컵집는 맨 센티야 미도가 와서 디데 이르자네 아주 디구두샤 디디기 처치네 시제 다셔다 하지 처치네 시제 다셔다 주든지 아주 밀어 디긴데 지소시다 용가지기 아주 미기 들어 세상 아주 뷰리나 차샤네 디 쳐지고 계지 말이야 자적 근데 지고 계지 말이 아주 지다 지소 나로 뷰리 그제 망 시트 보시나 아주 밤에는 산집에 쳐가래 애는 산집에 쳐배 남샤 定实实际呢，要什么呢？谈到修多啊，是吧呀？我这是谁？
English.
On a brief.
No, I'll just give a very brief summary. His Holiness was explaining to the Tibetans that it's been now 22 years since this series of dialogues began, and at the initial stage, among the Tibetans, and particularly among the monastic members, there was quite a high level of skepticism about the whole value of this kind of dialogue. And some, even among Western Buddhists, there was a perception that this kind of dialogue may be destructive in the long run because it might undermine the stability of the Buddhist faith. Regardless of these kind of attitudes, His Holiness said that he had been very convinced of the value of this kind of dialogue and pursued, and over the years it has become very evident that in fact there is a real value. And through this discourse and conversation, not only are there possibilities that the scientific pursuit can be, contributions can be made from Buddhism to scientific knowledge, but also from the science side, there's a lot of aspects of the scientific insights and knowledge that the Buddhists can learn, which will help expand and update the Buddhist understanding of the kind of material world. And so he just wanted to inform that to the Tibetan people who are here. And this time, His Holiness mentioned that there are quite a large contingent of Tibetans who are participating in this dialogue, including lamas and gishis and monastic members, but also some members of the laity, young Tibetans who have studied modern medicine and other professions that are related to science, and he's very happy to see them present here, because when we speak of this kind of Buddhism and science dialogue, we're not only talking about a matter that is of interest and concern to the monastic community alone. In fact, even the young lay Tibetans, they inherited a tradition is Buddhist faith, and Buddha himself encouraged his followers to test his word and accept the validity of his teachings on the basis of their own experiment and investigation, not on the basis of devotion and reverence. And behind this statement lies a certain confidence that the insights that the Buddha has found are those that can withstand analysis. And so therefore, any insights that can withstand analysis, the more it is exposed to investigation, the more it will be able to demonstrate its strength and richness. And this is in fact what has happened in the case of the dialogue between Buddhism and science. Of course, we mustn't forget there might be some individuals whose approach to the Buddha Dharma may be purely devotional, in which case then they don't have the strength and the depth of the understanding of the Buddhist teachings. Then for these individuals, when they are confronted with the fact that the science rejects the existence of Mount Meru, which is the center of the Buddhist cosmology, then they might immediately get so shocked and start losing faith. But on the other hand, those who do have a deeper knowledge of the Buddha Dharma will have grounded their understanding upon the teachings of the Four Noble Truths and the Two Truths. And for these kind of people who have a deeper understanding, then they will come to recognize actually as you engage with someone who represents a very critical perspective towards your own position, in fact, this kind of dialogue will enrich your understanding and make your own understanding stronger and deeper. So this is something that I wanted to share. And although in our explicit aim of this kind of dialogue is to help expand the wider body of human knowledge so that we have a better understanding of reality, including the mental world, but ultimately the goal of that, particularly from the Buddhist point of view, is to help promote towards elevation of suffering and happiness of the world. And so through expansion of knowledge, we will be able to contribute towards that. And that's ultimately the ethical motive behind our endeavor.
So that's all. Thank you. Now I'm acting like a student.
A student.
David? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Your Holiness, it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you for having us all here with you today and for the week. Let me begin by telling you just a little bit about myself, since you will be spending quite a bit of time with me this week, perhaps more than you wish. My name is David Meyer. You may call me David if you wish. I'm a professor of psychology and cognitive science at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. My hometown before going to Michigan was Louisville, Kentucky. I was born in Louisville during 1943, so I'm now 66 years old, 8 years younger than you. This is what I looked like back then. Those are my mother and my father. This is what I looked like when I was in high school at the time when you escaped from Tibet to India. I was 16, you were 24. I know that you're somewhat familiar big change, yes? Even bigger now, yes? I know that you're somewhat familiar with Louisville. It's also the hometown of Muhammad Ali, who went to high school there at the same time as I did, and whom you have helped to learn more about compassion. I hope you may do likewise for me. Louisville is also near Gethsemane Monastery, which was the home of Thomas Merton, who came to visit you in India just before he died. You have visited his grave site in Kentucky about 10 years ago, so you know a lot about where I came from. Also, my mother grew up on a farm in southern Indiana near Bloomington, where your older brother, Tupton Norbu, taught at Indiana University. This is another way in which you know at least a little bit about where I've come from. I also know a little bit about where you came from. I've read some of the books that you have written, such as The Buddhism of Tibet. Very good book. Very good. In the year 2001, I went to Tibet and visited Lhasa. I have seen your old home, the Patala Palace. This is a photograph of it that I've taken. I've been to the Jokang. I've traveled to Samye Monastery. I've climbed up to the caves of Padma Sambhava. And I've been in your bedroom at Norbalinga. I hope that someday you may get to go back there too. Now, you've said that you're just a simple monk. Such may be so. But you're also the greatest living, famous person. There are many famous living people, but they are not great. And there are many great living people, but they are not famous. Only a few living people are both famous and great. You are one of them. You also appear to be living, which is very good.
Very good.
You have done more to help humanity during my lifetime than anyone else I know. So it's a unique privilege to be here with you today. I am just a simple professor. So please have compassion for me during our meeting. So, what I want to do at first is to describe for you and others in the audience a bit more about the topics for our meeting of this week. The meeting will deal with the topics of attention, memory, and the mind. So just to make sure that everyone knows what we will be talking about, I will give a few brief, non-technical definitions about what I think these words mean. So, for example, attention. I will take attention to be the mental faculty that enables sentient beings to concentrate their perception, thinking, and judgment and actions on selected important objects. For example, right now, I'm trying to pay very careful attention to you and a little bit to the audience. By memory, our definition will be the mental faculty that enables sentient beings to store and recall knowledge learned from past experience for present and future purposes. I assume that both the definition for attention and the definition for memory have at least some similarity with what Tibetans would expect them to mean. This is not new territory for you, of course, but at least now the audience will know that we are all on the same wavelength. Finally, the mind. Far be it from me to tell you what the mind is, but I will try anyway. So for me, the mind is the complete collection of subjective experiences, knowledge, and processes, including both conscious and subconscious ones, and this is very important for Western scientists, that enable sentient beings to think and act intelligently. Now, I happen to believe personally that other beings besides humans are able to act intelligently as well. The monkeys that you have outside are smarter than me. So they surely have minds as well. And there will be issues that arise during the meeting about to whom does the term the mind completely extend. And we will discuss that. Now, attention and memory and the mind are important because, as you already mentioned today, all sentient beings would like to suffer less and be happier. And to decrease suffering and increase happiness requires training the mind. Mental training involves practicing to get control over the attention. And mental training also involves using memory effectively to cultivate wisdom and compassion. So, careful study of attention and memory may help to achieve the goals of all sentient beings. And this is what we wish to do. Now, for the meeting, we have a structure, and I call the...
Someone was saying that in this hall you will see tankas hung around, and these are the tankas of 17 great Nalanda masters whose writings are important for the Tibetan tradition. And listening to your presentation, it sounds as if one of those panditas were alive, they would be making the same kind of presentation.
Well, you are putting a lot of pressure on me. So, we shall call this the wheel of mind, and it provides the structure for our meeting. At the center of the wheel will be Buddhism, and we will think about Buddhism the entire time. Around the perimeter of the wheel go various spokes. We start with the contemplative studies, which will be represented here. Also, there will be philosophy and phenomenology, such as interested especially Francisco Varela. There will be developmental science, which
developmental psychology.
children, young adults, old adults like you and me. This will be connected to neuroscience, the science of emotion, which we call affective science, and cognitive science. So in the circle here are individuals whom you have now met that represent each of these points on the wheel, including the center. And specifically, the center is represented by you. You will be one of our experts on Buddhism. For contemplative studies, we have Alan Wallace, whom you have met, and Rupert Geffen, whom you have also met. An old one and a new one. Another new one who will represent philosophy and phenomenology is Sean Gallagher, back there. Representing developmental science and also, to a certain extent, neuroscience are Adele Diamond, there. And in the far corner on your left is Amishi Jha. For neuroscience, Buddhism, affective science, developmental science, cognitive science, and we will see about philosophy and contemplative studies, is Clifford Sarin, another old one. For affective science and neuroscience, we have another new one, Liz Phelps. And finally, up in the left corner for cognitive science, we have Anne Treisman sitting there, and me when I was much younger. So these are the individuals with whom you will be interacting this week. The goals for our meeting, we actually have many of them. I will try to mention them briefly. The first goal, which is the one for why Mind and Life was established in the first place, is to cultivate productive dialogue between Buddhism and science. Our second goal, equally and even more important, is to relieve suffering and increase happiness. Everybody agrees about this. Thirdly, we would like to improve our understanding of the attention, memory, and mental control for training the mind. We want to explore links between attention, memory, emotion, and compassion and try to understand better how they are connected to each other. We want to advance contemplative practice by thinking about developing new types of meditation methods. And we would like to design future research of interest to both science and Buddhism. We would hopefully come from this meeting with ideas for new exploration, such as has taken place during the past 20 years through your collaboration with Mind and Life. Now, these suggestions are primarily for the audience. to help them understand the speakers, including both me and later ones. Please look at the pictures and graphs, but do not try to read all text on slides, because, at least for me, that is sort of what I'm doing. And if you just listen to me talk, you will be fine. Listen to presentations and dialogue. If we are talking too fast, please ask us to go more slowly. So, my presentation for today is entitled Multitasking, Meditation, and Contemplative Practice. I need to define some of these words for you. For me, task is a word that means a piece of physical or mental work that is done by using a specific procedure in order to achieve a desired goal. For example, brushing your teeth is a task. It has a goal. This is to get your teeth clean, and you have a procedure for this. You use a toothbrush, toothpaste, and away you go. Solving an arithmetic problem is another kind of task. There are many, many tasks. Multitasking is a word that concerns trying to do two or more tasks by working on them at the same time, which we call simultaneous multitasking, or by switching back and forth between tasks, which we call sequential multitasking. So, here are some everyday examples of situations where multitasking takes place. Parenting children while washing dishes involves multitasking. Being the parent with the children is a task, and washing the dishes is a task. And in the United States and Europe, for sure, adults actually try to do both of these tasks more or less at the same time. Using a cell phone while driving a car involves multitasking. Driving the car, you want to get somewhere. Calling a friend, that's a different task. Working in a business office involves much multitasking. And controlling airplane traffic at an airport involves much multitasking. In fact, so much that these people have quite a bit of trouble. So, why is multitasking important? Multitasking provides insights into the nature of attention, memory, and mental control. Multitasking is very frequent in modern society. 90% of adults report that they multitask, at least in the United States and Europe, and places like Japan. Over 60% of these people say, there is too much. It is getting worse, so I need 8 arms and legs. Furthermore, multitasking causes suffering and confusion, as you can see here with this individual who is completely confused. The confusion is so great that in popular American culture, songs are being written about this phenomenon. This is one. My mind's got a mind of its own. My mind has a mind of its own. It takes me out walking when I'd rather stay at home. It takes me out to parties when I'd rather be alone. Oh, my mind's got a mind of its own. I've been doing things I thought I never would do. I've been getting into trouble without ever meaning to. I no sooner settle down than I am right back up again. I feel just like a leaf out in the wind. And so it goes. And this is the song. The singer of this song is a prominent Buddhist in America, Jimmy Dale Gilmore. He has performed for the Tibet House in New York City to raise funds. And he is the performer for this song. And, well, we've had enough of that. So, reasons to study multitasking. Suffering caused by multitasking may be decreased by careful investigation. Scientific discoveries about multitasking are relevant to Buddhism, meditation, and contemplative practice. Meditation may help people to cope better with the challenges of multitasking.
No. So this was just referring to, sometime in the past we had discussions about how some individuals are able to switch from one to another very easily without getting stuck.
Yes. We will discuss that further. Now, because time is short and I want to make sure you know what my conclusions will be because they will provide later discussion, I will tell you some conclusions now. And then I will present further material to help support them. So the first conclusion will be that meditation involves multitasking. And I will show you how this can be so. The second conclusion will be that scientific research on multitasking can actually help to improve contemplative practice.
Multitasking call research
A third conclusion will be that right mindfulness and right concentration can be understood on the basis of scientific theories about multitasking.
Right mindfulness right mindfulness
Furthermore, differences in people's abilities to meditate may depend on how well they can multitask. Here are a few more major conclusions. Data on multitasking suggests that mixing meditation methods in certain special ways during practice may be especially beneficial. Also, data on multitasking provides tests of Buddhist theory from the Abhidhamma. And multitasking is crucial for collaborations between first-person and third-person research. So, how can this be? To explain how this can be, let me first provide you briefly with some background from modern cognitive science. According to modern cognitive science, the mind involves various types of knowledge and mental processes. This knowledge and these processes can be studied by conducting careful experiments and testing precise theories about them. According to such theories, people have a system of component parts that process information during perception, thinking, judgment, and action. The parts of the human information processing system are connected together in a complex organization that has been analyzed and evaluated. This is a diagram of that organization. It is a cartoon. I will not try to explain it to you in detail, but you may see that it has many different parts. They are all interconnected with each other, and in dealing with the external world and the internal world, information is flowing around through the various different parts of this system. And what we try to do is understand better exactly what is the nature of the various parts of the system and the flow of information through it. So,
it reminds, he's always was saying that it reminds the Buddhist model of the coming together of objects, then the sense faculty and the consciousness.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, a considerable part of what I will say here is entirely consistent with the Buddhist ideas about these concepts and issues. So, to illustrate, for modern cognitive science, the human information processing system has processes for perceiving sensory stimulation. You know what those processes are, of course. They have been recognized in Buddhism, and they include vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and perhaps this one's a little bit special. I will explain. When you move your body like this, there are sensory organs in the joints that let you know where your limbs are. We call the sense that is involved with this kinesthesis. Kines means movement. It is either a Latin or a Greek word, and thesis means sensory.
He's only just wondering whether there is any exact parallel in the Buddhist model.
This is a good question. Perhaps we could discuss it later. Meanwhile, there are also processes for moving parts of the body, head, eyes, arms, hands, and so forth. Processes for feeling emotions, joy, sadness, fear, and so forth. Processes for storing, preserving, and recalling various types of knowledge. In cognitive science, we draw a distinction between different types of memory. One important type of memory, about which you will hear more during the week, is called short-term or working memory. This kind of memory and information used by it typically will last about 30 seconds unless you rehearse it to yourself. And this type of memory has relatively small capacity. It is, for example, used when you try to remember a telephone number or when you try to remember in solving an arithmetic problem. In addition, of course, we have long-term memory. Its duration is years, a lifetime. You remember what your house was like where you were born. Its capacity is enormous, essentially infinite. And you use it for things like remembering what you did in Ann Arbor a year ago when you gave your teachings for Julhart and Gelek Rinpoche. Now, long-term memory contains various kinds of knowledge. One type of knowledge we call declarative knowledge. This is about facts, past episodes, meanings of words, laws of nature, like if I let go of this control, it will hit the ground. In your declarative knowledge are networks of concepts that contain related pieces of knowledge. For example, the Four Noble Truths. This is an illustration of a network for Buddhist concepts that are presumably in your long-term memory. We start with Buddhism. You know a lot about Buddhism. You know about the three seals. You know about the Four Noble Truths. You know about types of meditation. You know that the three seals include the one about impermanence, the one about no self, and the one about suffering. You, of course, know the Four Noble Truths, paths, cessations, sources, and suffering. Notice that there are connections between this point in the network for both the three seals and the Four Noble Truths. Furthermore, for sources, you know about ignorance and attachment. For paths, you know about right mindfulness and right concentration. Notice how the network is building up. It's like the World Wide Web. You know about types of meditation, shamatha and vipassana. And you know that shamatha is a type of meditation related to right concentration. Cognitive science is able to identify what these networks are like in people's minds and to measure how quickly people are able to recall information from these networks. We know how fast you can go from a noble truth to a particular example of it. Actually, about 1/10 of a second, except for you, shorter than that, because you are so familiar. Also in long-term memory is procedural knowledge for using skills. This involves rules about what to do while performing various kinds of tasks. For example, if you were driving a car and a traffic light turns red, then you would know the rule that you should step on the brake pedal and stop. Of course, when you first tried to drive a car, you did not apply that rule and the car crashed. Or at least this is what is shown in the movies. You also know the rule that if China makes you angry, then you do compassion meditation. You have many such rules in your long-term memory. Now, I want to tell you briefly about some major discoveries for cognition and action. We have discovered that learning to perform a task, any task, toothbrushing, solving arithmetic, playing chess, driving a car, involves 3 basic stages. First, instructions about how to do the task are memorized. I explained to you how to drive. Second, practicing with the instructions creates subconscious rules that can be applied automatically without conscious thought. And third, more practice makes it easier to use these rules very quickly. This is related to a passage that you mention in your book, The Buddhism of Tibet, where you ask the question, how does one practice? And you quote Dram, who answered, cause your mind to become the practices. That's That's essentially what this shows also. Now, the benefits of practice in performing a task can be expressed precisely by what we call the power law of practice. This is a mathematical equation that describes how practice changes the speed with which you can perform a task. For example, how fast you can solve arithmetic problems. What's interesting about the power law of practice is if you look at the speed of performance versus the amount of practice that people have, the more practice they have, the less time that they take to complete the task. And this relationship follows an equation that is very much like what would be found in the laws of physics. So just like physics has very precise data, notice also that cognitive science can have precise data as well. These points fit that curve just as well as ones that physicists have shown you in the past. We do not envy physicists. We feel that we are strong scientists too. So, let me now talk about scientific...
David is also saying that's maybe there's a reason why sometimes they call it a soft science. The physicists.
No longer. We are hard science. Harder than physics because we know what we are talking about, whereas they do not. So, I now want to present scientific research on multitasking, and let me remind you, multitasking involves trying to do two or more tasks by working on them at the same time or by switching back and forth rapidly between tasks. Here are some major facts about multitasking that have been discovered through this research. First of all, multitasking can be studied in the laboratory. We do this by measuring response speed, accuracy, and brain activity. Let me demonstrate. Alan, I would like you to be a participant. Are you able to count from 1 to 10?
Yes.
When I say, you're not like the individual in the song. Can you count to 10 or to 1 without thinking twice?
No.
I want you to count from 1 to 10 as fast as you can when I say go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
He took about 2 seconds to do this. Now, do you know your ABCs, the alphabet?
More or less.
When I say go, I want you to say your ABCs from A through J as fast as you can. Ready, set, go.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
Excellent. Now,
That was the braking motion.
No.
here,
So how about saying it backwards?
oh, much.
So is it because due to lack of habituation?
He does not have the appropriate rules that we talked about previously to do it backwards automatically because he has not practiced that very much. Now, we will have him multitask. I want you to count from 1 to 10 and say your ABCs, but you will go 1A to B until you finish both tasks. Are you ready? Ready, set, go.
1A, 2B.
Faster.
No, thank you. D, E. I'm finished.
This
The
is
trial is run.
This is multitasking. We can measure how long he would take if he was switching back and forth. Okay, so important results about multitasking have been found. We have found that multitasking is often difficult and inefficient.
But I mean, here the examples, the example you've given to Alan has all to do with the level of thinking. But there might be, a lot of other activities where different perceptual processes are operating at the same time.
Yes.
Like your arms doing
Yes.
something.
Yes.
That's easier.
Yes. We will talk about that, actually. So in cases like this, performance time and mistakes increase substantially. The amount of increase is larger for more complex tasks. Interruptions during multitasking are especially harmful, hard to get back on task. Multitasking interferes with learning. New information is learned superficially, not in a deep way during multitasking. Very important for high school students who like to use cell phones while studying.
So this makes sense because in the Buddhist cognitive psychology, we speak of certain types of mind that are paying attention but not registering, not ascertaining.
Yes, yes. Multitasking can be dangerous and harmful to your health. Using a cell phone while driving is like driving while being intoxicated with alcohol. Also, it causes stress that may damage the brain and body. Now, we know a lot about the parts of the brain that are involved with multitasking. Because our time is growing short, I will pass through this very quickly and just mention that we do know a lot about multitasking in the brain. We know where various functions that are needed for multitasking get performed in the brain, and we know what these brain regions are doing. We also know that damage to them will be very harmful for multitasking. And in particular, these are just some brain regions about which you will hear much more during the week, and so I will not spend lots of time on them now. Instead, let me move on to mention that people differ in skill at multitasking. Males and females are about the same, but Japanese college students are actually better than American college students. We have found this in Kyoto and Ann Arbor. This might be caused by cultural factors, but there could also be genetic factors. And in particular, we have found in our...
No, so why genetic is all in this is wondering.
Well, some people believe that genetics causes subtle differences in the brain. This is possible. We do not understand them yet, but without further research, we cannot rule out this possibility. So more study is needed to know whether there are such...
Give me till 10:15.
Let him. Solon is saying that isn't it the case that in all... He's wondering whether one can actually make such claims about genetic differences across ethnic groups like Japanese and Americans. But within one ethnic group, we do see different individuals. Some are much faster in their thinking, some are less.
Japanese who born in America.
Interesting. We need, for the very good suggestion, needs to be done.
So there may be environment.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Language?
Yes. Cultural more likely than genetic to be explanation. We also know that practice improves performance in
Maybe because if you're shorter physically, then you can get around much faster.
True. Also, if you are shorter, you can talk faster. So we have found that when practice continues, several stages of skill in multitasking are achieved. People get progressively better in doing 2 or more tasks, almost at the same time. It is possible to become essentially perfect in doing 2 tasks at the same time. And this is a graph that shows extra time taken in multitasking as you change the amount of practice that you have had. And you see there is a lot of extra time taken for multitasking after little practice, but by 5 sessions of extensive practice, this extra time has decreased.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it is possible, as you were suggesting before, to become very good at multitasking for certain kinds of tasks. So what? How is this related to meditation and contemplative practice? That's what we really care about. So I will describe an application to meditation and contemplative practice of ideas from research on multitasking. Meditation involves bringing things into conscious awareness for careful contemplation in order to develop right view and to perform right action. Research on multitasking is especially relevant because meditation is a kind of multitasking that relies greatly on mental control. Good mental control is the key to successful meditation.
Mental control.
So let me describe a bit more about the role of control in meditation. Control is the ability to guide physical and mental processes for achieving desired goals. Mental control guides the mind like a driver steers an automobile. Mental control enables us to stay on course while contemplating chosen objects of concentration and thinking about their true meaning. Whoop. It's like what the Buddha said in the Dhammapada. Our life is shaped by our mind. We become what we think. Those who have purified their minds, who have gained self-control and truth, are truly fit to wear the monk's robes. The wise direct their thoughts to the supreme goal and thus gain highest knowledge. So, what is good control? The nature of good control can be understood with theoretical concepts developed in a field called cybernetics, and I will explain what this is. Cybernetics is a field of cognitive science and engineering that concerns the design of mechanisms for intelligently controlling the activities of artificial and natural systems. Thermostats, automobile cruise controls, heat controlling
mechanism.
Those all are designed with cybernetics. Pioneers of cybernetics are famous scientists and engineers. Maxwell, who preceded Einstein in the 19th century, the Wright brothers, who invented the airplane, and Norbert Wiener, who was a famous mathematician at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where we had the first public Mind and Life, all cybernetics. Now, these are principles of cybernetics for good control. Good control involves sensing and adjusting the activities of interconnected mechanisms that belong to a complex system. For example, an automobile cruise control has to sense how fast a car is going and properly adjust its chosen speed.
Cruise control
Yeah, it's slow, Jay.
Yeah.
the computer programs model today to ne ko tang che jwa ta zo tang che ta de ko the Quran je te wa dire dig mechanism control mechanism jikshi ne du shi ba dig to ne ni kom ja ba ka ya sim ke tang che ta mechanism kar yi ma yin to ya ko cha to His Holiness is wondering how effective the application would be from the cybernetics. So
we will get to this. These adjustments made during control involve detecting and correcting errors in the performance of the system. For example, a cruise control must notice that the car is going too slow and increase the flow of gasoline so that it goes faster. The control process uses feedback about the system's performance to repeatedly correct errors. And cybernetics describes how the control process works. So here is an example with cruise control, about which you know. It's the device next to the steering wheel. Cruise control works by an automobile driver putting a desired speed into the control knob. That is then the chosen speed, and it goes into a working memory that the cruise control has.
Computer. This is computer. Yeah.
Yes. This chosen speed then becomes the goal for the system. Also, the system knows what the current speed is. These two things, the speed that is the goal and the speed that is the current speed, go into a device called a comparator that decides whether or not they are the same. If they were the same, everybody would be happy. But if they are different, then the cruise control must make an adjustment. It detects the error in the speed, the difference between these two, sends that to a controller that controls the amount of gasoline going to the engine. The flow of fuel changes, the car engine changes speed, and the corrected speed goes back to working memory, and this goes around and around and around, and this is how cybernetics in cruise control works. The implications of these principles are that good control involves interactions between mechanisms within a complex system of parts. For example, the knob, the working memory, the comparator, the fuel pump, and so forth. Bad control may occur because of failures in any of these mechanisms and the signals that they transmit. This explains why various types of meditation are initially rather difficult, and I will show you how so in just a minute. For example, consider shamatha breath meditation and analytic meditation. The explanation is also going to show how meditation is a kind of multitasking. So let's consider shamatha breath meditation. Now you know what shamatha breath meditation is. You have done tens of thousands of hours of it. Here are some instructions about what that involves, taken from a book by Allen. I will not give you the instructions because you don't need them. But a cybernetic analysis of breath meditation shows that it involves a complicated series of steps. First, you have to interpret the verbal instructions. You have to relax. You have to start your breathing. Then you have to attend to your breath sensations. You have to memorize what those sensations feel like. You have to maintain your current focus of attention. You have to check your breathing. You have to form an impression of what your breathing is now like. You have to compare your current breathing with your impressions from the previous breathing. You have to decide whether or not they match, they are the same. If they are, then you keep doing what you already were. If they do not match, then you have to restart your breathing so that it is proper once again. This whole series of steps is the same as with other cases of cybernetics like cruise control. Conclusion: meditation is multitasking. Why? Because task 1 is preparing with the instructions. Task 2 is being mindful in this part of the meditation process. And task 3 is introspection, checking to see that mindfulness is working properly. 1, 2, 3. What about analytical meditation? Well, my hypothesis is that analytical meditation is like solving a jigsaw puzzle. Do you know what a jigsaw puzzle is? Well, you not only know what one is, but you now own one. And there is your own personal jigsaw puzzle, which you may try to work after our meeting is over. Okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Meanwhile,
David?
let's move on with analytical meditation, like solving a jigsaw puzzle. This is a cybernetic analysis for it. You have to choose your topic for contemplation. You have to recall pieces of knowledge from long-term memory about your topic, like meditating on the nature of emptiness. You have to fit pieces of knowledge that you recall from memory into a mental puzzle. You have to notice gaps that are present in the puzzle, places where pieces are missing. You have to ask questions to yourself to help fill the open gaps in the puzzle. For example, what is the relationship between form and emptiness? You have to wait for an answer to come to mind from memory after you ask this question. You have to check your breathing along the way. You have to examine the answer after it comes to mind. You have to see whether or not the answer that you came up with fills the gap. You have to decide whether it does fill the gap or not. If the answer is yes, you put the answer into your puzzle and you go looking for other gaps. If it does not, then you have to find a gap again and start all over. Round and around she goes, just like before. Task 1, preparation. Task 2, mindfulness. Task 3, introspection. More, multitasking. Conclusion: shamatha breath meditation and analytical meditation involve identical types of control, even though what's going on specifically is different. Still, same type of control. Another conclusion: the Dalai Lama is an engineer. You said that if you had not been the Dalai Lama, you would have wanted to be an engineer. Well, you do cybernetics of the mind. You are in mental engineering. So you do not have to come back again in another life to be an engineer. You already are one. We're running out of time. I need to go more quickly because Diego is going to pull my ear in a few minutes. Let me just mention briefly some additional important facts. This analysis can explain why it takes so long to become very good at meditation. It suggests that having a rich mixture of meditation methods will be especially good, and we can actually suggest what that mixture should involve. It explains why people differ in how well they can learn meditation, because they have various preferred styles of multitasking. It can also explain mind wandering, which has been called monkey mind. We have a whole analysis of why monkey mind happens. I will not go through this explanation, but it does involve multitasking. And if somebody wants to hear it later, we can come back. We do have connections with Buddhist theory. for example, you have written an entire commentary on Kamalashila's 10 stages of shamatha meditation practice. Our results about skill acquisition in multitasking are consistent with this analysis.
Well, what 10 stages?
Our research also supports the proposal that there is a stream of mind moments that passes very quickly during thinking and practice and performance. However, you may find this to be interesting. Our research suggests that the mind moments are considerably longer than what has been proposed hypothetically by Buddhist philosophers and scholars.
Because when we speak about mind moments from the Buddhist point of view, we make distinctions between two types of moments. One is called so one is called the Chasoji Gejima, which is a moment within which a shortest task can be performed.
Okay.
So that is quite gross. And then the other one is called the minutest points in time. So again, for which there are different, opinions among the Buddhist positions.
Well,
so
it might be worth discussing these various ideas because we may be able to learn more from the Buddhists about their analysis for the timing of this whole business. Meanwhile, and that is the conclusion you see here, further collaboration between Buddhist meditators, contemplative scholars, and cognitive scientists may be interesting. There are considerable prospects for collaboration in first-person and third-person research, such as you, Francisco, and the old ones of Mind and Life have become very interested in. There is good news about possible collaborations. The stability and vividness of attention in skilled meditators may allow various unique kinds of studies. Expertise in meditation provides access to subtle levels of the mind. And there are many interesting questions for future investigation, such as, how long do mind moments last in skilled meditators? Are skilled meditators aware of rapid perceptual and memory processes? Does meditation improve people's ability to do multitasking? Does the time taken to master successive stages of skill in shamatha meditation obey the power law of practice about which I told you previously, the little physics-like equation? What is the ideal amount of time to practice meditation per day? What is the ideal mixture of practices for becoming skilled at meditation? Are the higher states of consciousness realized by Tibetan Buddhism and other contemplative traditions like Theravada the same? How are states like shamatha and the four jhanas related to each other? Bunches of questions. I should also mention, although I won't belabor this, there are some possible pitfalls for this collaboration. Bad news for possible collaborations if one is not careful. Now, because we're running out of time and we don't want to emphasize the bad news quite yet, I'll just show you that there is some. And I will close. We can discuss the difficult questions later. I want to mention a few other difficult questions that get raised because of this cybernetic.
But we will touch upon those later.
If you wish. If you wish, we may touch on bad news.
That's very important.
Yes, I agree. Otherwise, I would not have mentioned the bad news.
There is, in fact, an established tradition in the Buddhist expositional system as well, where, of course, what are the pitfalls are explicitly discussed.
Yes. I would like to close with a few more difficult questions. This is speculation. You may enjoy it. Please take it with appropriate intent from me. Is an automobile cruise control conscious? Is a robot a sentient being? Can computers have emotions and other kinds of subjective experiences? Are the internet and World Wide Web aware of what is happening on Earth and in the universe? And let me explain this one. Might the Gaia hypothesis be correct? The Gaia hypothesis, this is the notion that the entire planet is conscious and is a conscious being. Would the Buddha care about all of this? If so, then how should we be treating computers, robots, the internet, and our Mother Earth? Should it be discussed in a new book by His Holiness called More Ethics for the New Millennium?
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. So I would like people to remember that in 15 minutes we're going to be back. We're going to start at past again. And
thank you so much for being
And the tea is going to be out to the back door, and you'll see a large hall where the tea will be served. So please remember to come back in time. Thank you. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation, David. One of the questions that we would like to start this discussion with is this idea, and maybe Your Holiness could put on the microphone, is the whole idea of this law of practice. As David Meyer was very clearly presenting, there is obviously a strong effect of the law of practice that even can be measured in numbers. It can be calculated how many efforts it takes to dominate or be in better control of a certain task. And we know that this is also true for, obviously, meditation. Do you, in the Buddhist tradition, have such an idea of the law of practice? And is it also possible to measure the effect of these effects of the practice?
So listening to So listening to David's presentation and the reference to the power of the law of practice, His Holiness was saying that it reminded him of the certain understanding of processes of development in relation to, for example, the shamatha practice in the Buddhist context. For example, when we are cultivating single-pointedness of mind in shamatha meditation, one speaks of the applications of 6 forces and 4 types of attention and so on, and then the 9 stages of attentional development. There is a recognition of a process by which one learns to acquire different stages of this development. And then also from the point of view of the actual attainment on the part of the individual, there is also the idea of 3 levels of understanding. Initially, understanding and experience at the level of study and hearing and learning, and then moving on to the level of
instruction.
So you talked about, so you have the level of instruction, so which is like the Buddhist equivalent would be the level of understanding derived from hearing and study. Then you have understanding derived from and then you spoke about how you need to then compare it against long-term memory and whether or not it fits with the memory and so on. So that would be at the level of second level, which is the level of understanding derived from critical reflection and contemplation. And then the third stage is when everything becomes effortless and spontaneous. So this is referred to as the level of experience or understanding derived from meditative practice. So there seems to be a parallel there.
And the very word meditation here has the connotation of familiarization. So once you get clarity through thinking, critical reflection, then you enter into the phase of meditation, understanding arising from meditation, and this is closely related to the whole notion of familiarization. It just gets easy. You slip right into it.
So I have a question then. Let's suppose you have become very skilled at analytic meditation, but now I give you an entirely new topic, such as, is a thermostat or a cruise control conscious, or does a robot have feelings? And you now do analytical. You now do analytical meditation on that. Will it be equally easy, even though it's a brand new topic, or will you have to, in effect, start over?
So David, I rephrased the question. Would it be fair to say that your question is that if someone has a skilled analytic meditation,
analytical ability.
Yeah, ability, and then if he or she would apply it to a totally new topic, compared to an untrained person, will that person be more faster? And is that the question?
Yes. That was exactly the question.
Generally, when in the Buddhist context, now here we're actually talking about the application of intelligence, applying in the fact of intelligence. So in relation to the point you talked about multitasking, how fast you can direct your attention and so on. So from the Buddhist point of view, this relates to an application of the faculty of intelligence. And when we speak about intelligence in the Buddhist tradition, we speak of swift intelligence, penetrating intelligence, and vast intelligence, breadth, and then nyurva, swift, depth.
And he said penetrating was really clarity, the sheer clarity of your intelligence.
Swift. And clear. Yeah, clear intelligence.
Clear said it, but namza 배정해라 지 도다 그러지be 이제 그도 sometimes 전에 지 배지 뉴부시트야 직체. 다디 지범으로 로로마임 세부 10차고 다와 현통의 직체. 싫어 세. 다디 유름부 망거라 뉴부천 시트야 싫어 뉴. 다 싫어 써야 되기. 다 딘자 딘고 쓰네.
No.
두번 해가지고 싫어 써.
So imagine you have, dealing with a new topic, and then the person who has a swift intelligence will be able to, latch onto this very quickly, and a clear intelligence would be someone who is able to.
Clearly.
Yeah, first.
Yeah,
comes
sure,
the-
sure.
So first is
sure,
the
sure.
vast intelligence, one who's able to really encompass a lot within the field.
되는 싫어 써.
And then comes the clear intelligence, which is able to really see the distinctions.
되는 싫어 뉴.
And then the swift intelligence, where you're able to actually move fast.
되는 싫어 써.
And then the penetrating intelligence, where you're able to actually go deeper and deeper.
What are the relationships between these types of intelligence? Are they highly correlated with each
다
other?
진리야 저지 만들어서 무도가
So
genetic
here His
만들어서.
Holiness feels that it may have some genetic differences in the individuals, may make a difference.
가시 싫어 쳐다 써 예바 건실라. 나 싫은 공연시. 뉴어도 마찬가지.
So you see individuals who have the quality of vastness, comprehensiveness, and also clear, but not very quick.
야 가시 지금 뉴르탄 엘리야 고 남산다가 conclusion 찍때 이제 저때 아따되게 나셔서니
Some people have the opposite problem. They are too swift, then they reach hasty conclusions which they regret later.
We know some of those.
뮤직이데 자파니스 아메리칸스데 여셔도 말이지 나래서 삼주다 지다 강사 지다가 리리 룽컴 때마데 any permanent mantra any environment 다 먹을 줘요.
So here His Holiness's own feeling is that one cannot make differences based upon ethnicities among these different types of qualities. But within one ethnic group, one will see differences which may have probably a lot to do with genetic difference, but also the environment in which they grow, and also health, the health of the individuals as well.
Health is very important, and in fact, if I had more time, I was going to talk with you about your health, because we have found that if you do aerobic exercise where heart rate goes high, at your age, you will maintain your ability to multitask much better. It's true.
Yes.
To highlight, just bring up one point that was stated, that maybe a bit more clarity among these four types of intelligence. His Holiness's hypothesis, or his hunch, is that if you develop these through training in one area, that it is like a skill that then with greater ease you could apply. So there's a generalizability that one should see, that you could take those same intelligence skills, analytical skills, and apply them to very different tasks. If they're not just locked into one field. That's the hypothesis.
What about the relations between them? If you work on developing one, is there a hypothesis that the others will also be better?
저는 주로 최세 뉴스 뒤에 소소스 나 지금 믹스에 뒤로 가려나. 하미시나.
His Holiness' first answer is not sure. Untested hypothesis. And in calling upon the other monks, silence for the time being.
야, 다음은 주셔야. Not sure.
Actually, the last statement leads to a question that I was also contemplating in regards to the law of practice. Is it true for any task that we are doing? And according to Western psychology, I mean, we've been mostly speaking about mental tasks, but also some physical tasks may be true. But are there also some mental tasks that this does not apply to? That practice really improves? Or is it that you are, maybe intelligence is one of those things, or is it not applicable to that?
Would you like me to answer? So, the best I can say is that wherever the presence of this law has been investigated under laboratory conditions involving a variety of tasks, including, as you suggested a moment ago, physical ones. In fact, this law was first discovered by measuring performance of physical tasks. It was first discovered specifically with operation of a certain kind of typewriter keyboard. Not the keyboard on a computer like mine, but a special keyboard that allows you to use multiple fingers at the same time for entering letters. So rather than having a separate key for each letter, you change the patterns of keys that get pressed to indicate one letter or another. And a certain investigator about 100 years ago, while studying operation of that kind of special keyboard, discovered this law. Other people then tried to see to what extent this law would apply elsewhere in other situations. For example, it was discovered to hold for individuals who develop the skill of making cigars. In England, they used to make cigars by hand, and you could measure how quickly a worker could make a cigar. The company owners cared about this because the more cigars made per hour, the more money for the company, even though the worker does not get any of that more money. Later, people began asking, well, does this also work for mental tasks? And by now, many dozens of mental tasks have been studied with respect to this law. And with very few exceptions, it works everywhere. The ones where it does not work tend to be very simple tasks, like stepping on brake pedals, shifting gears, where a slightly different law works instead. Rather than the graph looking like that, it dives down a little bit more steeply and involves what we would call an exponential function as opposed to a power function. But these two types of mathematical relationships are very similar to each other. And I know of basically no case where laws of this type have been violated in the laboratory. Whether they also apply elsewhere in certain kinds of complicated real-world tasks, like solving deep scientific problems, such as what is the nature of the space-time continuum? Did Einstein get better and faster at solving such problems and conform to the power law of practice? The only way we can know is to close our eyes and see if we can commune with him, which may take a while, but it's quite general.
Yeah. The reason why I was asking is because one of the statements that is time and again made when people confront in the West meditation for the first time is, I can't practice and I will never learn it. So obviously meditation is one of those skills that definitely depend on applying yourself and practicing.
Well, the way in which the way the way in which I see this power law applying to meditation is that during each meditation session, especially with methods like shamatha, where you have an object of focus for the attention, it would in principle be possible to know how long and how often during the meditation session you are actually focused on the object as opposed to being focused elsewhere. And what you would expect is that the amount of time spent focusing elsewhere other than the object will gradually decrease across sessions as you get better, such that eventually you will be able to spend all of your time in each session on the object of focus. And the question then becomes whether or not this change in the amount of time that you are off task follows the same pattern as the power law of practice versus the number of sessions that you have put into practice so far.
Can I ask another question related to this topic? One thing I wanted to bring up is how to bring it back to the topic of attention, right? So as we think about people getting more and more efficient at a task, what actually tends to happen is the demand on attention is reduced. So for example, learning how to drive a car, initially it's very attentionally demanding. And as you become an expert driver, it's less attentionally demanding. So in a way, we can see this as an increasing ease with which we can drive. I wanted to ask how this might be related to the concept of an increasing ease in the context of meditation practice. Is it the case that as we become more efficient, there's actually a reduction in the use of attention? Are we changing the nature of the way the task is done? Is it a change in the awareness, or is it a change in the actual process and demand on attention? That's the question.
다디 14호로 미신디. 그래도 뒤에다 꾸중아 저러. 꾸중아 되기. 대 나와서 연어 매나. 자 남주한테 그러나 루리 dom날 셔야잖아요. 그러나 내심셔 dom들다. 내심셔 dom잖아. 그다 저도 선바 두시대 일시다. 레방아. 소송 그게 거든 로직으로 시작했어. 또 그런 도스체도 와. 다 좋아서 슉 잡고 주죠. 그 시험마다. 그 시험에. 다 도스 제위는 뭐 그들 대위는. 그는 나올 시험에도 못 삼죠. 야. 또 서로잖아. 야라 셈 요야지. 또 요야지. 디 사바지. 다 유연이 미국 떠서디가라. 미국 지라지가 떠야지 일을 쳐지. 되네. 그게 유들이야 차이도잖아요. 아니 용원 남시선 차발 때네. 르바지. 되네. 두시제. 아니 소화제. 세상에 안 돼도 제디 변한다 가서 그래. 콘배왕게 이루디 다시 때. 원시가 걸 무시도 걸 봐. 네, 심지어 사바 패지 요래. 나 일을 쳐 봐요, 여러면도.
샤고로다. 군도에나.
일을 쳐 봐도 유요로. 소소 task 디나 간주만이요.
다른 아무도 배 미디어 스타일 때도 봐. 루시간이야다 그제스 두고요죠. 미기셔가 그제 두고요죠. 일을 가는 그제스 두고요죠. 다 이제 진짜 모든 딱세셔 디저 트레이닝을 상담하고 있어요. 아주 나서야 말이야. 그래서 좀 되게 도와.
So, although His Holiness was saying that although he's not very clear about this, but if you look at, take your question in relation to the model of arising of a cognitive event in the Buddhist Abhidharma system, say particularly the Abhidharma Samuccaya, Asanga system, we identify 5 mental factors that are understood to be omnipresent. In other words, they are present in any act of cognition, whether sensorial or mental. So these 5, so there is the intention or volition, cetana, which is what really directs your mind to any object. And then you have attention, which selects from the field of your experience a particular characteristic or object or property.
Perhaps the initial engagement with the object?
Yeah. So and then you have contact, where there's a registering of the coming together of the object and the sense faculty and the perception and the cognition. And then there is the perception where, or you can say discrimination, samjaya, where a kind of a certain, the actual cognitive event, act occurs.
You're able to distinguish it from something else.
So now, in the case of, say, and then there is the feeling. So when there's a kind of a tone, a feeling tone of that experience.
In a very primitive sense of just pleasure, pain, and difference. And feeling just very simple.
So in any given mental act, these 5 things are happening. So that whether it's in the sensorial level or in the mental level. So, so imagine that if, with relation to multitasking, someone is driving or whatever, quite a lot of things are going on. So your eyes may be looking at something, but physically you are pushing the pedal or something, but mentally you are thinking about something else. So a lot of these things are happening at the same time. So His Holiness is wondering, so when something like that happens, to what extent what is happening at the mental level takes precedence, or to what extent what's happening at the sensory, the physical level takes precedence, may differ from moment to moment.
I might add just a brief comment with regards to meditation, and why don't we stick with shamatha, and that is it does get easier as one grows accustomed to it, so that's kind of obvious. But if in the course of developing along the path of shamatha, and it's becoming easier and easier, less effort, if you're becoming more and more mindless, less and less attentive to your object of meditation, then from the Buddha side, and not being scattered, but just not attending closely, engaged, then from the Buddha side we'd say you're falling into laxity, chingwa, and dullness, mukpa. And if you continue that, you will achieve perhaps the perfection of stupidity. But you'll not achieve shamatha, because the path of shamatha entails an ongoing increasing engagement, an increasing clarity of engagement with the object, so it doesn't have the quality of losing your awareness as you proceed. If you do, you've done it wrong. And it really can give rise to serious mental problems.
So how these 5 omnipresent factors perform may differ from what particular type of mental state you may be in. So if you are emphasizing the application of single-pointedness meditation, then the operations of the 5 omnipresent factors may be different from an analytic type of meditation, where you are primarily emphasizing the application of intelligence and critical faculty. So even though in the basic form, the 5 factors are the same, but how they operate and function may differ from the type of meditation you are engaging in.
Yes. It sounds like there are 2 kinds of practices being discussed. One kind of practice is where I practice, and the steps I take become easier, and in the end become so easy that I do not need to attend, and I'm almost not really aware of how I do what I do. For example, playing tennis, or maybe solving...
For other tasks.
Yeah, for other
yes,
tasks.
True, quite true.
Or solving a math problem, maybe. I don't know. Experts, if you ask experts, they don't always know how they do what they do. But then meditation sounds like a different kind of practice, where there's not a decrease of awareness, but the practice is to make your awareness stronger, or your attention even stronger. So how does that work? That sounds different.
this kevandos chida chaweri kanda kaine che mangbuji ko che de tangbungel zogajin che ndugola kombe wange namshi chilia ane susu che to nyina samata moko che to yaro jungor bas yang gom gnalo ya komba ko ketan ke shebe kabla ya shishin tengo dugala ane lela ro chimba zam maimba yan ko
对啊，这个你一日就洗了一把，早晚一日就吧，早晚一日洗，一起洗下的。说早晚讲，第一场累就在生那个时候的，生那个个，生那对不对？生那几把对？对对，都是当用点过的。洗洗这把土，
生那几把。
哦，就是去가서 뭐시대洗배지 거 고면도 돼. 얘네 간다다 둘이 그게 잘해야 돼. 또 주고 싶은 거. 저当用过的，都是当用下来了。
Do
you want to explain that?
And so there's a case.
아주 예방한 시에도잖아요. 친구 중에서 뭐 믿어보지, 예배직세. 친구 뭐 중에서 뭐 따보지.
Along the path of developing shamatha, so the focused attention, at the beginning, there's a lot of attentional imbalances of excitation on the one hand and laxity on the other. As you develop along the path, then the occurrence and the intensity of these attentional imbalances, hyperactivity and deficit, if you like, decreases until when you become very adept, not having achieved shamatha yet, but out of 9 stages preceding shamatha, when you're on the 8th, at this point, neither laxity, even subtle laxity, or subtle excitation arises any longer. You become so adept, so familiar, so expert in the practice, they don't arise any longer. At that point, you no longer need to break the flow of mindfulness, focus on your object, and monitor the meditative process, because basically the job is done. Until that point, when there's still the possibility of excitation or laxity arising, then it's imperative to maintain the ongoing quality improvement that you apply introspection. It breaks the flow of mindfulness very momentarily, but this allows you to recognize the imbalances when they arise and apply remedies. But when you become very adept, then you don't need to apply introspection. You can really let it go latent, or you set it into equanimity, that basically let it go dormant, and then it's more of a smooth flow of mindfulness. But again, it's very important that now you've become very adept, you're absolutely not less attentive to your meditative object. In fact, you're hyper-attentive, but with a profound sense of looseness, of relaxation and ease, but with extraordinary mental, cognizing engagement. You're very cognizant of the object, and with a tremendous degree of clarity.
But 이루지기네. 이루지기네 고 이루지기 그걸 믿고 찍리야. 대체. 다 그 똑배는 내대베링데 폐지란데 심중도 저기 질려야 또 면다지. 또 그들 사람한테 유저를 도면 차이르잖아요. 이야 아다 심중도 저기 지다면다면 지금도 생기. 상 용할 수도 와. 또 생각하게도 와.
So even at the level of mental cognition, His Holiness was saying that Buddhism makes distinctions between conceptual.
야다 뭐 임베 소는 시제. 그 야다 것이니 야마다 것이니 산업형 여러다. 세상은 다 이루가 시고다. 다 이루가 그 산업 맞고 그지 튼지드 데니 요때베 링데라. 야 아다 심주도 제가 내가 시다로 지. 다 네가 융일린 거 봐. 융일 질린 거. 심 그게 지지고 차네. 차로 걸어 띵인지. 안 가래. 다 정gem도. 참바. 그래서 제 링비야. 딱 그래서 용기야나데 커도 그래서 용기나다. 나봐. dumba. 도스잖아. 냐리 와서지. 이네다 그 미국 대강을 높게 했니. 그게 내습싱에디 띵인지지. 다 미국 미지고 참배송해야 되지. 딱 거기에 사나 토인도잖아요. 로디디 내가 그랬지기나. 융이디디 가르치기나. 꾸르디디 그랬지기나. 개발도 가.
So to carry on with the translation, so
the because the technology has 심주자 딱제자 디디 수 링기링기제 and kuduja samda and 검지 먹는 냠냠 여부를 주는 and 검지 먹 쉐르도 다 and 뭐 배송 사바지 거래자.
So in Buddhism one speaks of
루리사바 뭐 배송 사바지 루리사바
within the mental cognition, we speak of conceptual stage and non-conceptual classes. So at the conceptual level, when we use attention and all of these processes, essentially we are mediated through some form of concepts in engagement with the object. There, how the other mental factors like feelings and attention and so on operate, and how they operate at the non-conceptual state, again, may be different. But he was saying that there isn't any clear discussions of this in the Abhidhamma text in the Buddhist tradition. And maybe, so for example, when at a certain point when for example, when you are applying your mind to any given subject of inquiry in a meditative process, then in addition to the 5 omnipresent factors, there are 5 other mental factors come into the picture.
싫어, 안 돼도 싫어서. 유명한 것이지.
싫어 말해.
싫어 찍고 말다.
싫어
자발의 유명한 비슬리 거래.
말해 싫어 로율은 죽을 까
로율.
So in addition to the 5 omnipresent factors, there are other 5 factors known as the object determining factors. They come into play. So these are mindfulness, confidence and trust, or confidence or trust, and single-pointedness, and intelligence, mindfulness, and aspiration, and something called determination or decision. So how they operate when you are at the conceptual level, thought level, or how they operate when you have reached the non-conceptual level may be different, but the texts do not really speak about these things. So His Holiness was saying that maybe with the help of insights and the methods of experiments that are being developed in modern psychology, and comparing against the Buddhist Abhidhamma understanding, and maybe at this point we should also ask if some of the meditators are willing to articulate their experiences. We may have to write new texts, a taxonomy.
Microphone, yellow. It's coming.
Dilaya, dopa the Sunday Drogan Dilaya Tara Mamuju is that one. Tambupena, Nanzo, the Chunal Chonga within the Yorata. Tambukuza, Jandu Kale, Rakado, Kanga, Musichitura. Paruma Chondugalan, Chun Music to Chula Chomanaki, Tobana Lamashu and Negas Pena, Kizu in Nabagombatavo, and the Tolang Nabagombasago. Tolang and Negas Gumju, Hine Tom Naga, and so on Motorede, Tilly Jolum Turto de Galanico, Tadruwa. Tini Tolan Parjamalato. 제독이 내가서 딜리세나시로 그러와 사게버터 되가라 베즈가 세마라바 시제 다 사주와도 자주 깨지면 통다 질라서도 베즈 메워다버지 이나야 코랑기 충된도 두베 군동한테 자와 지기고 자와 타라지면도 안 찬다 지기해서 그래서 타랑 남배쇼네 희야나네 순주 남게 고마토 되가라네 베즈 켜는 좀 남게 주고 그러면 되지 이사데서 나라 삼수로 어디 있어 대화스케 shuma서 다가라
That's also the real competitor. Oh, that the other savage and the Shunan patient.
So
that's all the Lamge Benalia, Kazakasu, Sana Church, Church, John Union.
So Kishila was basically confirming the point that if you compare to the textual understanding of these processes, there is a clear recognition that the process involves from an initially very effortful activity, which over time, as you go through the various stages, the 5 parts and the 10 stages of the Bodhisattva's levels, and culminating ultimately in the attainment of Buddhahood, there is a recognition of a decreasing or a diminishing of the effort element, so that at one point it becomes totally effortless and spontaneous.
다 안다 가서 딩야만 계속 주물한다. 왕시다 일로 떠고 이와치야 돼. 아마는 그래서 먹고 좋아. 자, 다 안다 왕시 걸 싫어 주고.
왕시 걸 싫어.
저처럼 생명의 생기고 생기 성주 이렇게 합서.
가.
저기 루시에서나. 생명의 생기고 생기 삼아 주요.
생기 삼아. 다 대양저 양 차사랑 켈릉 맞다. 다다 응원바랑 응원배 중다 진의 배지 야가요리. 당고바들다 뭐 고마. 뭐 근두. 당고 근두다다 지 가소래. 다 세ven 없이 셰인잖아요. 다 딜리팅 거로 와도 우면중 소식을 세ven 없이 런 없이 송고도 제고도 와. 사다 안데 내가 왕식 퀄이야. 그렇게 두고 유미. 아니 다 똑바로 안 되지. 다 다시 그루터 상황을 두고 되네. 안데 유명한 사람들이 배제 두고 아이고. 다 당시 미글리 캐봐도 와요. 미글리 캐봐셔도 미글 각배직이 뭐이나 양로들이 양 쳐다면다지도 와. 주배직이 양 쳐다면다지도 와. 그래서 그 캐봐 쉬우지였어요.
So His Holiness was saying that in previous mind and life discussions, one of the points that was raised was from the Buddhist psychological, psychologist's point of view, a fundamental distinction is drawn between sensory levels of experience and mental, conceptual level. And from that point of view, although both of these different mental states will have the presence of these 5 omnipresent factors, but how they operate may be different. It would be interesting to see whether we can somehow get a handle on this.
And
Sorry, then I forgot. And His Holiness was also saying that it may partly depend also on the kind of object you take for the mind. And if the object is kind of something that is how would you put affirmative?
Affirmative, yeah.
Or sometimes you can take a mere absence as an object. So whether you take a mere absence as an object, or His Holiness did not cite the example, but in the case of Buddhism, it would be the emptiness would be a mere absence. Whether you take a mere absence as an object, or you take something that is affirmative as an object,
something that's actually present.
Would make a difference to the operations of these factors. Then also, if you look at mental states have different kind of, I suppose one could say, tones. Some of which are more effectively oriented. So for example, like interest or aspiration and so on. And some of them are more cognitively oriented, like intelligence and so on. So again, the operations of these mental factors that are concomitant with these different mental states may be different.
So we are starting to identify some signatures of brain activity that correspond to these different disposals of the 5 factors. And for example, one aspect of this about which you will hear more during the week is that we now have ways of identifying when the attention is directed inward as opposed to outward. When it is directed outward, a certain network of brain regions will be active. When it's directed inward, a different network of brain regions will be active. In both cases, the attention may be intensely focused, but as a result of it going as a result of it going inward as opposed to outward, there is this change in which regions are engaged. And what's interesting is that under conditions where one has no specific task, there tends to be a cycling back and forth between inward and outward focus that takes place at a rate of approximately 3 cycles per second of not per second, per minute. in, out, 3 times per minute. And you can see the fluctuations in which particular network is engaged.
This is while performing a task?
No, this is when they are in the so-called rest mode.
Rest mode.
I was wondering whether, Rupert, you would want to jump in, because I know in Theravada, instead of 5,
Yes.
there are 7 omnipresent mental factors. So maybe you could...
Yes, that's right.
Yes, well, actually that was what I was going to talk about tomorrow. But so in addition to they would add one-pointedness as a universal, and faculty of life, which is a difficult one.
It's
Jivitindriya. As a mental factor.
So in the Abhidhamma Kosha, so in in Abhidhamma Kosha, although a distinction is drawn between 5 omnipresent factors and 5 determining factors, all of them are listed as universal mental factors.
Okay.
So that means Abhidhamma Kosha is, in fact, more than the
Usually,
Theravada.
we consider Abhidhamma Kosha, I think based on a Pali tradition. Oh. Within the, yes, within the Vivashik, yes, there are 4 major differences. Different schools. So maybe a little different. According to Theravada, maybe. Oh, yes.
I wanted to go back, though, a little bit to ask a question about this practice thing. Because within Theravada Abhidhamma, there is an idea of 24 conditions. So when anything happens, up to 24 different types of condition help something happen. One of those conditions that seems very relevant here is what is called asevana pachaya, which means sometimes it's translated as repetition condition. That is, the more you do something, the easier, the better you get at it. So it seems very relevant to this concept. I know in Abhidhamma Kosha, and they also have lists of pratyaya, these kinds of conditions. But I'm not sure, I can't remember if something like asevana, this repetition, is mentioned.
I don't remember.
Oh. One is, I heard, in a Pali Sutra, there are about 200 different minds or mental factors is mentioned. Do you see that?
200?
Not so many.
Around 200 are the same
Chaitasika.
세마다 문지 니게 시작시도 그게 거수. 그래서 때리 하던 아주 중요한 벽에는 누가 뒤수 둘이야 쉽게 가지 버렸어.
His Holiness has heard that there is in a Pali text, one of the Pali texts, a reference to something like 200 mental factors. I don't know whether someone informed him it's Chaitashikas or maybe different permutations of the mind. 심중 아이 고주단 데셈 지겹도 가는 거 뭐 지겹는 시기 삼된 당보인이 되게 지단 줘 봐. 근데 고주 숨겨 지겹도. It could be the
if it's
I think it could be a
permutations
permutations of the mind.
Then this is
You can go up to 300 or something.
or even more, I think. Sometimes.
그렇죠. 비슷히 인지래. 심중을 안 들으면도 심중 압중 아니르셔 고주.
But the relevance
아주 나는 쉽죠. 그죠?
쉽게.
근데 그놈들 생기 삼아주도 되죠. 초다 semba 도시리 준다리 담 로트텐 일레체 디지.
저 싫어도 가죠. 로즈살 싫어 봐. 어디 좀 당시 걸 위해서 그런다.
So Abhidhamma Kosha lists 10 of them as universals. Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, if I could ask one question, David. You spoke of focusing outer, and then you put your hand inner, outer, inner. There's a very common practice in shamatha, many methods, but one practice in shamatha, very common, in Tibetan especially, is you create a mental image in the space in front of you, right? There's another practice, many practices in Vajrayana, where you don't simply visualize or create a mental image in front of you, but you create a three-dimensional mandala all around you, and most of it is outside. And so, but just to keep the simple one, creating a mental image, like creating a mental image of a banana on top of your head. You can do. So is that focusing inside or outside?
Well, this is an empirical question, yet to be definitively resolved, but in my humble opinion, I would hypothesize that you would tend to get a signature that is more toward the outside. And the reason is because when you generate imagery of that sort, the activity is taking place in the same brain regions as would be activated if there were literally an object out there on which you were focusing. And in order to then assimilate and further process the activity that's taking place in those regions, you would want to be engaging the same attentional network if you were literally being stimulated from the outside. That's my hypothesis. But it's an interesting question because there may also...
Because it's also very common to visualize things inside your body, like a pearl of light at your heart.
Certainly that would involve the inner focusing mode, but in order to generate this image that is, in effect, perceived as being outside, you're also having to use a certain set of additional processes. That image outside doesn't come about and arise spontaneously on its own. You have to do it through certain kinds of willful action.
Unless you're
yeah, exactly. And so to the extent that this additional set of processes is involved, and it may, in effect, require a certain amount of introspection, you could imagine that at least during the generation phase of getting the image going, you would have a mixture of these two different networks present, and so it would be a joint hybrid signature that would then evolve into being dominated by the one that's outwardly focused.
Thank you.
So I think we have a wonderful closing point here. We're going to have an afternoon session, and His Holiness is going to retire for lunch now. We have already 1/2 past, at least on my watch. And so please, thank you very much. And you can see that it's very engaging, and I'm looking forward for the next sessions.
One thing I just want to
share,
to express. In previous time also, you see, I mentioned if we use the word dialogue, science and Buddhism, then it get the impression Buddhist religion. So therefore, instead of using that, in many occasions I mentioned the Buddhist science and modern science, or science and Buddhist science. But nothing to do with Buddhist concept, or Buddhist philosophy, or Buddhist religion. I think the reality also, we are not discussing, or because of the seeking certain sort of scientist sort of view about rebirth, or about nirvana, about moksha. We are not discussing these things. So actually, we are discussing about mind or these things. That means Buddhist science, inner science, yes. Like that. Yes. Buddhist science also external things, internal things. So this is truly, in reality, also is a Buddhist science. Then secondly, if we use this word, dialogue, science and Buddhism, then other people sort of follow a different religious tradition, they may not pay much attention. Because this is exclusively Buddhism, Buddhist. So then our main aim is a contribution for a better world, better human being. We're never thinking of propagating Buddhism. As far as religion is concerned, individual, up to individual. Now, we are trying to create the new interest, through that way, new awareness about our inner world, which is our happiness or all these troubles very much based on that. We cannot ignore that. Whether you are a religious person or non-religious person, different question. Everyone has the emotion, isn't it? So usually is it no pay attention, no awareness, how much involvement about our emotion. So naturally, they also have complete ignorant, to deal with this emotion. So we become slave of emotion, so that all these unthinkable destructions happen, like that. So therefore, our basic aim is humanity. So in that respect, if we use Buddhism, then it's something exclusive for Buddhism. So Buddhist science, there we can invite some Christians, some Islam, Muslim, and naturally some Hindus, yes, who have some sort of similar sort of, I think, some sort of explanation about mind. Of course, this in Hinduism, there are a lot of explanation. And in some cases, perhaps there are more people who have actual experience than we Buddhists. Yeah. So worthwhile to invite such people. Let them demonstrate. Let them explain out of their own experience, isn't it? I always feel those who see the Hindu practitioner who live in snow, in mountain, completely naked body. So there must be some technique, otherwise they will die.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
Yes, that is, I think, very good. That brings curiosity. That brings the desire for investigation. That's very good. So anyway, ignorance is good, useful.
So it's the ignorance that then gives rise to interest.
If we, everybody, truly enlightened like Buddha, then completely relax. No need any effort.
I think you made two really very important
Just put it on the side.
Yeah.
Just put it on the side.
Yeah, is that okay? Is that working?
Yeah.
I will hold.
Thank you. A very key point you made was that Buddhism may contribute through its science and be taken seriously by Westerners separate from whatever the religious views of Buddhism may be. And in pursuing the mind and life agenda, it's especially important to highlight the fact that Buddhism has an inner science of mind that's extremely important to take into account for improving human welfare, regardless of whatever particular individual's beliefs about religion may be. And insofar as we do that, everybody will be attracted to the activity because everybody does want to use various kinds of scientific insights to improve the human condition.
Very good. Good.